I saw a woman dressed in light stop a runaway truck with her bare hands. I know it sounds impossible. You might think I'm lying or it was just my imagination, but I swear on my daughter's life that it happened. It was an autumn afternoon, far too warm for the season, when my life and my little Laura's almost ended on a dirt road in the countryside. But something I can't explain to this day protected us. And since that day, nothing has been the same. My name is John. I'm 42 years old, and for a long time, I thought faith was something for those who had nothing left to hold on to. I worked myself to the bone on the farm, lived tired, disillusioned, watching life pass by without much hope. My wife, Anne, died when Laura was only 6, a cancer that took everything I loved most in this world. It was just Laura and me, a girl with curious eyes who never stopped asking questions about her mother, about God, about why bad things happen to good people. I didn't have any answers. In fact, I had stopped looking for answers. That particular day, we were going to visit my sister, Mary, who lived on the other side of the mountains. Laura was 9 then, in a phase where she talked incessantly, collected flowers along the way, and saw beauty in everything, even the ugliest rocks on the road. I walked beside her, lost in my thoughts, when she took my hand and said, "Dad, do you think Mom is seeing the flowers I'm picking for her?" My heart ached, as it always did when she talked about her mother. I didn't know what to say, so I just squeezed her little hand and we kept walking. The road was dangerous, narrow, winding through the mountains with blind curves and drop-offs on one side. It had rained heavily in the previous days, and the ground was slippery, covered in red mud that clung to your shoes. It was one of those roads where you hope you don't meet any other cars because it barely fits one vehicle, let alone two. But it was the shortest way to Mary's house, and I wanted to arrive before nightfall. Laura was excited, humming a song she had learned at school, swinging a small bouquet of wildflowers she had picked along the way. I looked at her and thought how she could be so full of life, so hopeful, even after everything she had been through. Sometimes I felt guilty for not being able to give her the complete family she deserved, for not having answers to her questions about life and God. That's when we heard the noise, a loud engine roar, then a strange sound, like something breaking. I looked behind me and saw an old truck, loaded with crates of fruit, climbing the mountain. The engine was making a weird noise, emitting black smoke, and even from afar, it was clear that the driver was having trouble controlling the vehicle on the steep incline. Laura stopped singing and looked at me with those big, curious eyes. "Dad, that truck is making a strange noise." I told her to stay close to me, that we were going to pull over to the side of the road to let the truck pass. But as the vehicle approached, I realized something was very wrong. The driver couldn't brake, and the truck was gaining speed downhill, straight towards us. Fear gripped me in a way I had never felt before. It wasn't fear for myself, it was the terror of losing the only thing I had left in this world. I picked Laura up and started running to the side of the road, but there wasn't much space. On one side was the precipice, on the other the mountain slope. The truck was out of control, and I knew we wouldn't be able to get far enough away. It was in that moment of utter despair that something happened that changed my life forever. Laura was in my arms. I could feel her heart beating fast against my chest when she pointed ahead and said in a strangely calm voice, "Dad, look at the lady in white." I looked and couldn't believe what I was seeing. Right there, in the middle of the road, between us and the runaway truck, there was a woman. But she wasn't an ordinary woman. She was dressed in something that shined, as if it were made of light. Her hair floated gently, even without wind, and her face had a serenity I had never seen in any human being. The strangest thing of all is that as soon as she appeared, the noise of the world seemed to diminish. The roar of the truck's engine was muffled, as if we were underwater. Even the birds stopped singing. It was as if time had slowed down, as if we were inside a bubble of silence and peace. The woman raised her hands towards the truck, and I swear I saw, with these eyes that the earth shall eat, the vehicle begin to slow down. It wasn't a sudden stop, it was as if an invisible force was holding the truck, guiding it gently to the side of the road. The driver's eyes were wide, his hands on the wheel, but it was obvious that he wasn't the one controlling the vehicle. Laura clung to my neck and whispered in my ear, "Dad, is it an angel?" I couldn't answer. I couldn't even breathe properly. I was seeing something that defied everything I believed about the world, about what was possible or impossible. The truck slid smoothly onto the shoulder and stopped against the trees without any damage. The driver stumbled out of the cab, looking around as if he'd just woken from a dream. He looked at us, then at where the woman had been, but when I looked again, she was gone, vanished as if she'd never existed. The silence that followed was deafening. The driver came to us, still trembling, and asked if we were all right. I said yes, but inside, I was in complete shock. He commented that he'd lost his brakes on the descent, that he was sure he was going to hit us, but then suddenly felt as if the truck had a life of its own, as if something was guiding it away from us. Laura climbed down from my lap and went to the spot where the woman had appeared. She stood there, staring at the ground, as if searching for some sign that she had been there. "Dad," she said, "the lady disappeared, but I can still smell her. She smells like the flowers Mom loved." That's when I broke down. I sat on the dirt road and started to cry like I hadn't cried since Anne's funeral. Laura came and sat beside me, ran her small hand through my hair, and said, "Don't cry, Dad. The lady came to protect us. I think Mom sent her." For the rest of the way to Mary's house, we were silent. I tried to process what had happened, to find a logical explanation. Had it been a hallucination caused by fear? Had the strong sun and fatigue made me see things? But Laura had seen it too, and she described exactly the same thing I had seen. When we arrived at my sister's house, she sensed something had happened. We had a different expression, somewhat lost, somewhat transformed. Laura recounted everything with the spontaneity of children, gesturing, mimicking how the woman had raised her hands, describing the light emanating from her. Mary looked at me with that expression of someone who doesn't know whether to believe or worry about their sibling's sanity. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about everything that had happened, reliving every second of those moments on the road. The image of the lady in white wouldn't leave my head. There was something about her face, an expression of such pure, unconditional love, that reminded me of the way Anne used to look at Laura when she was a baby. And if you're listening and want to hear more stories like this, real stories of people who have lived through inexplicable experiences, subscribe to the channel. Because what I'm about to tell you is only the beginning of a transformation that changed not only my life, but the life of our whole small community. In the days that followed, I couldn't stop thinking about what happened. Laura, on the other hand, seemed to have accepted the miracle with the naturalness of children. She drew pictures of the lady in white, always with her hands outstretched and a serene smile. One morning, she came to me with one of the drawings and said, "Dad, I think we should build her a little house where she appeared." At first, I thought it was just a child's fantasy. But as the days passed, the idea started to make sense to me too. I couldn't explain why, but I felt a growing need to mark that place somehow, to honor what had happened there. I started talking to the neighbors about what happened. Reactions were varied. Some believed, others thought it was imagination. Others whispered it might have been an apparition of the Virgin Mary. Mrs. Conception, a very religious woman in the community, was the one who encouraged me the most. She said that miracles happen when we least expect them, especially to protect the innocent. The idea of building a small chapel at the site of the operation began to gain traction. Some neighbors offered to help, others donated building materials. Even those who didn't fully believe in the story seemed touched by the idea of having a sacred place in the community. The chapel project became my obsession. I worked during the day on the farm and spent the afternoons at the operation site, measuring the land, planning the construction. Laura always came with me, played around while I worked, sometimes stopped and stared intently at a point in the air, as if she could still see the lady in white. During the construction, strange things happened that strengthened my faith in the miracle we had witnessed. One morning, we arrived at the site and found wildflowers arranged in a small bouquet right in the center where the altar would be built. Nobody in the community had put them there. It was as if they had sprung up overnight. On another occasion, I was having trouble leveling the ground when an unknown man appeared offering help. He was an elderly man with calloused hands that spoke of someone who understood construction, and he worked with us for 3 consecutive days. On the third day, he said he had to leave, but when I went to look for him to thank and pay him for the work, nobody in the community knew who he was or where he had come from. The construction of the chapel sparked interest beyond our small community. People from neighboring towns started showing up, curious to see the place where the miracle had happened. Some came as tourists, others as pilgrims seeking their own answers. It was interesting to observe how the local economy began to benefit from this movement. Mary opened a small diner in her house to cater to visitors. Her husband, Anthony, started selling souvenirs and religious images, and other residents found ways to supplement their income with the emerging religious tourism. But it wasn't all roses. There were also the most staunch skeptics who saw the chapel as a way of exploiting other people's faith. This hurt me deeply because those who knew me knew I was never one to lie or take advantage of others' good faith. Laura, with the innocent wisdom of children, was the one who helped me deal with the criticism. One afternoon, when I was particularly discouraged by the malicious comments, she came to me and said, "Dad, those who didn't see can't understand, but those who need to see will one day see." Those words gave me the strength to continue. The chapel's inauguration was set for a special date, exactly 1 year after the apparition. More than 200 people attended, coming from various towns in the region. The priest from the nearest parish agreed to bless the place, even admitting that the church would need to investigate further before officially recognizing any miracle. On the eve of the inauguration, a terrible storm hit the region. High winds, torrential rain, and lightning that illuminated the sky in a terrifying way. I was at home with Laura, listening to the storm outside, when she came to me with a worried expression. "Dad, what if the storm destroys our chapel?" Her concern was legitimate. The chapel hadn't been completely finished yet. Some finishing touches were still needed, and a storm of that intensity could cause serious damage. But more than that, I felt there was something symbolic about that storm, as if it were a test of our faith, a challenge to see if we truly believed what we had experienced. Around midnight, when the storm was at its peak, Laura did something that completely surprised me. She got out of bed, went to the kitchen, and lit a candle. "Dad," she said, "I need to take this candle to the chapel. The lady in white is calling." My first impulse was to tell her she was crazy, that we weren't going out in that storm. But there was something in her eyes, a determination and a serenity that reminded me of the day of the apparition. It was as if she were being guided by something greater than the two of us. I grabbed a raincoat, wrapped Laura up, and we went out into the storm. The wind was so strong that we could barely walk, the rain lashed our faces like small stones, and the lightning intermittently illuminated the path. But Laura walked with a confidence that gave me the courage to continue. When we arrived at the chapel, we found other people there. Mrs. Conception was kneeling before the makeshift altar, praying with a rosary in her hands. Anthony and a few other neighbors were also there, all braving the storm to protect the place that had become sacred to our community. Laura walked to the center of the chapel where the apparition had occurred and placed the lit candle on the ground. Even with all that rain and wind, the candle flame didn't go out. She began to pray a prayer I had never heard before, with simple but meaningful words. "Lady in White, protect our little house, protect our community, protect everyone who comes here seeking hope." It was at that moment that something inexplicable happened again. The storm, which had been raging for hours, began to gradually subside. The wind lost its strength, the rain turned into a light drizzle, and finally stopped completely. The clouds parted and revealed the moon, illuminating the chapel with a silvery, serene light. We all stood there, in silence, contemplating what had just happened. Laura's candle continued to burn calmly, like a small beacon of hope in the darkness. Mrs. Conception whispered, "It's a sign. She's here with us." The next morning, at dawn, we went to check the storm damage in the region. Several houses had damaged roofs, trees had fallen, and crops had been damaged. But the chapel was intact, without any damage, as if it had been protected by an invisible dome. From that day on, my faith solidified definitively. It was no longer a matter of believing or not believing. I had lived it. I had seen it. I had felt the presence of the divine as realistically as I feel you hearing me now. And Laura, my precious daughter, had been the instrument through which this grace had manifested itself. The chapel's inauguration took place the following day, under a clear and sunny sky. The priest spoke about the mysteries of faith, about how God acts in ways we cannot always understand. He didn't officially declare it a miracle, but his words made it clear that he believed something extraordinary had happened there. In the months that followed, the chapel became an increasingly well-known pilgrimage site. People came from afar to see the site of the apparition, to pray, to ask for intercessions. Many of them reported their own experiences, inexplicable cures, problems that were resolved after a visit to the chapel, dreams of the woman in white. I became, in a way, the guardian of the chapel. Not officially, but people naturally sought me out to tell their stories, to ask for advice, to share their own experiences of faith. It was strange, because I had never been a religious man. I had never seen myself in the role of a spiritual counselor. But somehow, the experience I had gave me an understanding of life that I didn't have before. Laura grew up surrounded by this atmosphere of faith and hope. She became an even more special girl, always willing to help visitors, always with a word of comfort for those who needed it. Many people commented that there was something different about her, a light in her eyes, a wisdom that wasn't common in children her age. One day, almost 2 years after the apparition, Laura came to me with a serious expression and said, "Dad, the lady in white told me that our mission here isn't just to take care of the chapel. It's about caring for the people who come here seeking hope." That's when we decided to expand our work. We started organizing community activities at the chapel, prayer groups, meetings to discuss community issues, and charity drives to help needy families. The chapel became not just a place of worship, but a center of support and unity for the whole region. Today, 5 years after that day on the road, I can say that my life has been completely transformed. I'm no longer the bitter and hopeless man I was before. I found a purpose, a reason to live that goes beyond my own needs and desires. And Laura, my angel on earth, has become a young woman full of compassion and faith, always ready to lend a hand to those in need. The lady in white never appeared again in the same way she did that day, but I feel her presence constantly. In the smiles of the people who find comfort in our little chapel, in the miracle stories we hear regularly, in the positive transformation our community has experienced. Sometimes, when I'm alone in the chapel at the end of the day, I look at the spot where she appeared and whisper a thank you. Thank you for saving our lives. Thank you for awakening my faith. Thank you for showing me that there is something greater than our small daily concerns. If you've come this far in my story, I want to leave you with a message. No matter how lost you may be, no matter how hopeless your situation may seem, there is always a light waiting to illuminate your path. Sometimes that light comes from where we least expect it, through unexpected people, at times that seem impossible. Faith isn't about having all the answers. It's about trusting that there is a greater purpose, even when we can't see it. It's about being open to receiving grace, even when it comes in ways that challenge our understanding of the world. Laura is 14 now and already talks about becoming a nurse to care for sick people. She says she wants to bring to the hospitals the same love and hope we felt that day on the road. I have no doubt that she will succeed because she carries within her the same light I saw in the lady in white.
Our little chapel continues to receive visitors from all over the country. Some people come seeking miracles, others come seeking peace, others still come simply out of curiosity. They all leave a little different than when they arrived, that I can guarantee. And the road where it all began? Today, it's known as Miracle Road. It was paved by the local government and has signs for those who want to visit the chapel. But for me, it remains the place where my real life began, where I discovered that love is stronger than fear, where I learned that we are never truly alone. I end my testimony with the words Laura said to me that first night after the apparition. Dad, the lady came to protect us, but she also came to teach us that we can protect others too. And that's what we try to do every day. Protect, welcome, love, and keep alive the flame of hope that a woman dressed in light ignited in our hearts one autumn afternoon on a dirt road lost in the countryside.